What if you woke up in a world completely different from your own, with memories of your past life and a burning desire for revenge? Meet Haruto Amakawa, whose life was cut short in a tragic train crash only to find himself reborn as Ryo in a magical kingdom. Now he's thrust into a world of intrigue, danger, and royal politics, armed with mysterious powers and a promise to his only friend. Will Ryo conquer his past and forge a new destiny, or will the shadows of his former life drag him down? Dive into the epic tale of reincarnation, revenge, and redemption. The scene opens with a boy named Haruto, preparing to leave his city for another. His childhood friend Mian tearfully begs him not to go. Haruto, trying to console her, holds her hands and promises to return for her when he is older, vowing to marry her so they can always be together. He assures her that even if he dies, he will watch over her. Mian agrees and Haruto boards a bus, which tragically ends in an accident, claiming his life. In the year 991, in the kingdom of Beltram, during early spring, a boy named Ryo awakens in an unfamiliar room after a long sleep. He begins to recall fragmented memories of a past life as Haruto Amakawa, but struggles to make sense of them. As he ponders his situation, a group of men enters, surprised to find Ryo alive after he had suffered a fever the previous day. They discuss their affairs while eating, and when Ryo's stomach growls, one of them calls to him. Ryo responds with enthusiasm, eager and hopeful. When Ryo is invited to eat, he hesitates, mentioning he smells bad. One of the women advises him to wash. After leaving, he picks some fruit from a nearby tree. While eating, more fragmented memories of Haruto's life and death resurface. Despite this, Ryo resolves to stay true to himself and not become Haruto. He lives in the slums, determined to avenge his mother. He remembers questioning his mother about their black hair, and she explained it was due to their origins in a distant land. She had promised to take him to his grandparents in Yagumo, but her life was tragically cut short by an unknown assailant. Overcome with emotion, Ryo wipes his tears, cleans his face, and dresses. A group of women approaches Ryo, though they hesitate due to his odor. One asks if he has seen a girl with purple hair. About his age, Ryo responds that he hasn't. The woman named Celia apologizes for startling him and learns that Ryo's parents were immigrants, explaining his black hair. She asks again about the girl, but Ryo gives the same answer. Celia asks if they may search the slum, but Ryo advises against it, warning that it's no place for women like them. When she inquires about the clothing worn in the slums, Ryo describes them as worn and tattered. Lady Vanessa suggests they change into more appropriate clothing before returning, but Lady Christina insists they hurry. Vanessa warns them to avoid causing any disturbances, which Christina agrees to. Vanessa then asks Celia to check for magical traces. Celia chants Era, detecting significant magical energy from Ryo. She informs the others of his immense potential. Lady Vanessa inquires about other magical signatures, but Celia confirms only Ryo and their own. Unbeknownst to them, Celia quietly offers Ryo a token of gratitude. Ryo opens the small pouch to find valuable silver coins. After glancing around, he quickly pockets the token and heads home. When he arrives, a masked stranger ambushes him, attempting to stab him. However, the token blocks the attack, and both it and Ryo fall to the ground. The masked man closes in as Ryo realizes everyone else in the room is dead. He demands the stranger's identity. The masked man tries to strike again, but a figure resembling an angel appears before Ryo, addressing him as Haruto. She promises to teach him magic and how to harness his powers. Gently touching his cheek, she instructs him to sharpen his senses. As her touch ignites a radiant light from Ryo's body, he narrowly dodges another attack. He counterattacks, landing a punch in the man's abdomen. The masked figure chants to enhance his abilities, but Ryo ultimately overpowers him, knocking him to the ground. The man's mask falls, revealing him to be Ryo's former boss. Ryo is shocked to see his former employer dead. Hearing a faint voice from the earlier sack, he opens it to find the missing girl. She pleads for help and promises to take Ryo to the castle, where her father will reward him. As they approach the castle, the girl sees the dead man and faints. Ryo carries her to the castle, where he encounters the women again. Lady Christina, suspicious of Ryo, confronts him and slaps him. She takes her sister Flora from his arms, while Lady Vanessa calls for Rowana and Celia to assist the unconscious but unharmed Flora. Christina accuses Ryo of kidnapping her sister, but he insists that Flora sought his help. Lady Vanessa demands a detailed explanation, but Ryo firmly states that Flora had asked for his aid. Christina grabs Ryo's shirt, and he grasps her hands, urging her to listen. Lady Vanessa draws her sword, warning them to back off. They reluctantly let go, but Christina threatens to charge Ryo with Lise Majesty. Lady Vanessa insists on hearing his side and orders Ryo to accompany them to the castle. He resists, but eventually agrees when Vanessa makes it clear it's a command. Ryo repeats that he only rescued the girl. Vanessa informs him that he'll need to provide all the details he knows. Realizing protesting is futile, he agrees but makes it clear he'll only talk. Vanessa assures him that if he's innocent, he will be set free. At the scene of the incident, some royals arrive to investigate. A guard informs Sir Alfred that one man has been found alive. They bring out the unconscious masked man. Suddenly, someone in the crowd breaks an object, instantly killing the masked man. The figure confirms the death and quickly leaves the scene. At the castle, Ryo is suspended and tortured by Charles Arbor, the vice captain of the royal guard. guard. Despite Rio's protest that he only came to speak with the ladies, Charles demands to know what Rio knows about the kidnapping of the second princess. He promises Rio gentle treatment and immediate release if he cooperates, but Rio maintains his innocence, prompting Charles to become more aggressive. Meanwhile, Princess Flora wakes up and is given water by Vanessa and Celia. She recounts the events but is informed that Rio's story is still under investigation. Flora insists they summon Rio, but Vanessa explains that they need the king's consent first. Flora urges Vanessa to hurry, wanting to prevent any further issues for Rio. Vanessa and Celia go to relay Flora's request. Back in the torture room, Charles continues his harsh interrogation, but Rio remains firm. A guard warns Charles that Rio might die if they continue. Charles worries about the reputation of the guards and the consequences they might face. When Vanessa and Celia arrive, they witness the brutal scene. Charles defends his actions as a legal interrogation, but Celia demands Rio's release. Though Charles believes Rio may be involved in the kidnapping, he is relieved to hear that Flora is indebted to Rio. Charles orders the guards to release him. Celia offers help but is told not to touch Rio as he collapses. She feels guilty and vows to heal him. Charles allows them to leave, and Vanessa watches him exit. Rio wakes up in a room and asks where he is. Celia explains he's in the royal palace and checks if he's in any pain. Rio, surprised to find himself uninjured, thanks her. Celia admits she healed him and reveals that she's studying magic at the Beltram Royal Academy. She formally introduces herself as Celia Calais. Rio thanks her again and asks what will happen next. Celia explains that the king wishes to personally thank him and that he's to have an audience with the royal family. Rio asks for her help with the proper manners and etiquette for the meeting, and Celia agrees to guide him. They shake hands, eager to work together. At the king's palace, Rio is welcomed by the king and the royal family for his bravery. The king announces that Rio will be awarded a scholarship to the Royal Academy's primary school. Professor Celia, who will oversee his education, informs Rio that they haven't yet assessed his academic abilities. She asks if he can read and write, and Rio admits he has never received formal education. Professor Celia offers to personally tutor him and invites him to her research lab after school. Professor Celia explains that many of the academy students come from noble or royal families. Rio reassures her that he understands his place. She advises him to approach her if he encounters any difficulties. Celia then takes Rio to the classroom, introducing him as the new transfer student and asks the class to be welcoming. As the students whisper among themselves, Professor Celia prompts Rio to introduce himself. Rio introduces himself, expressing his gratitude for the chance to attend the academy, acknowledging his limitations and hoping for the students' kindness. A student quips that Rio speaks like a servant, causing the class to laugh. Professor Celia praises Rio for his courage and instructs him to take a seat. She begins the lesson by asking the students to copy a numerical formula and solve a problem written on the board. As the class works, Celia quietly approaches Rio, advising him not to push himself too hard. Some students laugh, remarking that Rio cannot read. Celia reprimands the class, urging them to focus on their work and stop mocking Rio. After class, Rio heads to Professor Celia's research lab, hearing her voice inside. He knocks on the door. When Celia opens it, she scolds him for not reading the sign, but Rio apologizes, explaining that he cannot read. Realizing it's Rio, Celia accepts his apology and invites him inside, mentioning that her office is in a bit of a mess. She explains that, despite the current clutter, she's usually organized. As she clears a spot, Rio notices her bookshelf and comments on how young she looks. Celia admits she's only 12 but skipped grades and graduated high school early. She hands Rio some calculations to solve, and he finishes them quickly. Celia is impressed, but Rio explains it's just basic multiplication and division. Celia reveals that only Princess Christina can solve such problems easily, prompting Rio to recall his own university education, which explains why he finds the math simple. When Celia asks where he learned arithmetic, Rio shares that his late mother taught him. Moved by his story, Celia decides to make tea. Rio enjoys it, commenting that the flavor suits his taste. Professor Celia then inquires about Rio's first day at the academy and if he encountered any problems. Rio responds that all is fine, but asks for recommendations for children's books to help him learn letters. Celia agrees to help him find suitable books. It's training day, and while other students pair up for practice, Rio is left to train alone. The instructor tells him to strike as he pleases. The other students observe as Rio's skill in swordsmanship, honed through past training with his former master, becomes evident. Despite this, the students make derisive remarks. After training, the instructor tells Rio he has the potential to be a knight, but Rio, uninterested, thanks him politely for the compliment. After class, Professor Celia praises Rio's effort and reminds him that end-of-term exams are approaching. She reassures him not to worry too much about grades since he's new to the academy, but Rio is determined to do well. On exam day, Celia encourages the class to do their best. After the exam, Rio steps outside and watches students play, triggering a flashback to a woman named Maishon and memories of his childhood friend Aya's Haruto Amakawa. The emotional separation due to his parents' divorce and Maishon's absence from school still affects him. He resolves to embrace his identity as Rio and remain strong. When final exam results are posted, Rio's name appears alongside Princess Christina's, surprising the students. Alfonso confronts Rio, questioning how someone like him could be at the top, implying implying foul play. He accuses Rio of cheating, but Princess Christina intervenes, calling Alfonso's jealousy unsubstantiated and demanding proof. Alfonso falls silent, and Christina reminds him that false accusations harm the Academy's reputation. Professor Celia arrives and defends Rio, attributing his success to hard work. Alfonso, unconvinced, leaves with his supporters. Rio tries to thank Princess Christina, but she interrupts, saying her intervention wasn't for him personally. She warns him not to expect to surpass her next time. Celia congratulates Rio on his exam success, but worries that other students might continue to target him. Rio assures her that he is used to such treatment. Celia remarks that nobles who engage in bullying demean themselves and shares her own experience of facing similar behavior. Rio asks Celia if she had similar encounters. She recounts facing bullying from those of higher social standing, but chose to ignore it. Rio is grateful for her support and considers her a friend, though Celia wonders if he's teasing. She says she doesn't mind being his friend, and Rio asks her to continue supporting him as both a teacher and friend when needed. Celia agrees, saying she'll comfort him if he feels overwhelmed by bullying. As they converse, Celia mentions that Rio will be participating in an upcoming knightly tournament. She suggests that excelling in it might catch the knight's attention even before he graduates. Rio helps her with a book, casually noting that he has no plans to become a knight. Celia notices he has grown taller, leading to a playful discussion about their heights, and they share a laugh. Back in Celia's lab, Rio makes tea, which Celia remarks tastes different when he makes it. Rio explains that he follows instructions from books. Celia asks what Rio plans to do after graduation since he doesn't want to become a knight. He tells her he plans to embark on a journey to a place he wishes to visit. Celia asks if he's considering leaving the country, but Rio replies that living in this country has its difficulties for him. Celia suggests he could stay at the academy as things might fall apart without his presence. She also points out that he often keeps her grounded when she's too absorbed in her research. Rio expresses gratitude for Celia's guidance, but speculates that she may soon be involved in marriage talks. Celia dismisses the idea of marrying anytime soon, and Rio assures her that she should pursue what she wants. He compliments her beauty, leaving Celia unsure how to react. Quickly shifting the topic, Celia asks Rio where he plans to travel after graduation. He reveals that he wants to visit his parents' homeland, the Yagumo region. Celia points out that Yagumo lies near the wilderness. Rio is momentarily lost in thought, recalling a promise his mother made to take him to Mo. The day of the tournament between the glorious knights of the realm and the Royal Academy students arrives. Sir Alfred steps forward as the referee, and the crowd cheers. He introduces the first challenger from Beltram Royal Academy Primary School, Rio. As Rio enters the arena, Alfonso taunts him, warning him not to disgrace himself and embarrass others. Rio calmly replies that he will give his best effort to avoid such an outcome. Alfonso scoffs, claiming that no one expects much from Rio anyway. Professor Celia enthusiastically cheers for Rio, urging him to stay focused. Sir Alfred then introduces the first challenger from the Knights of the Royal Guard, Charles Arbor, who had previously tormented Rio. Charles sneers, commenting that he didn't expect the dirty little brat from before to face him again. Rio acknowledges his gratitude for Charles's past treatment, saying he only regrets not being able to repay him sooner. With the signal to begin, Charles, armed with a shield, feels insulted by Rio's seemingly casual stance. As the duel progresses, Rio skillfully dodges and blocks Charles's aggressive attacks, showcasing his mastery. Consumed by revenge due to his demotion years ago, Charles fights recklessly. However, Rio disarms him, pointing his sword at Charles's chest. Sir Alfred declares Rio the victor. Charles pleads for a rematch, but Sir Alfred dismisses the request, insisting on accepting defeat with grace. Reluctantly, Charles concedes, and Rio thanks him for the fight. Professor Celia and the master praise Rio as the crowd applauds. End. That night, a furious Charles recounts his bitter history with Rio to an unknown figure. The next day, Celia looks forward to celebrating Rio's victory, but sees him preoccupied elsewhere. Rio meets a mysterious woman who gives him a written account of his match, praising his performance before quickly departing. Unseen, Celia watches from behind a tree before leaving quietly after the woman. Professor Celia later reviews students' post-graduation plans and notices that Rio has left his section blank. She recalls Rio's wish to visit the Yagumo region. In class, Celia begins a lesson on magical usage, focusing on the importance of controlling magical energy and casting formulas. The older students practice lightning spells, enhancing their magical control. Alfonso and Stuart mock Rio, insinuating that only those with poor magical skills need such lessons. Celia demonstrates her own advanced control by closing all the windows and casting a multi-light spell, illuminating the room. Rio, observing her, realizes that while he cannot use traditional magic, he can mimic the flow of magical energy. After class, Stuart accuses Rio of trying to win over the female students and insists that his tournament victory was pure luck. Celia steps in, reminding him that baseless accusations don't befit nobility. Stuart threatens Rio, warning him that causing trouble during the outdoor practicum will lead to consequences from Duke Hugo's family. Rio bows respectfully and departs. Princess Flora empathizes with Rio's struggles. During the outdoor practicum, the students will be tested on military exercises. Flora feels nervous, but Rowana reassures her, reminding her that the competition is a team event and they are prepared to face potential monsters. Alfonso explains that their group must take the shortest route through the mountain forest and reach their destination before sunset. He He boasts about having insider knowledge from soldiers in his region. Rowena finds this unfair, but Alfonso dismisses her concerns, claiming that intelligence is key in war. As they travel, Alfonso orders Rio to carry everyone's luggage. Princess Flora offers to assist, but Rio insists on handling it alone. While they proceed, goblins appear, but the Vanguard students easily handle them using enchanted weapons. Rio remains on the sidelines, not actively participating, which catches Alfonso's attention. Meanwhile, shadowy figures in the forest observe, planning to test Rio's abilities. The group encounters a cliff blocking their path. As they consider options, a spear is thrown from the bushes, narrowly missing Rowena. Orcs emerge, and Alfonso commands the Vanguard to raise their shields. Rio intercepts a spear aimed at him, while Stuart struggles with his own shield, sustaining an injury to his leg. Desperate for help, Stuart is pushed aside by other students. As chaos ensues, Flora is pushed off the cliff. Rio reacts instinctively, diving after her. He activates his unique energy manipulation, propelling Flora back to safety while he falls. Flora, landing safely on the cliff, searches frantically for Rio, but he has disappeared. Meanwhile, the other students, having dealt with the orcs, focus on exiting the forest. Still falling, Rio considers how his ability to survive unharmed may seem suspicious to others. He understands that it's not magic, but a unique power he doesn't fully comprehend. While the students blame Stuart for Flora's fall, he tries to shift responsibility onto Rio. The commander urges the group to leave the forest, brushing off Flora's concerns about Rio's fate. Alfonso coldly remarks that Rio deserved what happened, leaving Flora disheartened. Determined to help Rio, Flora continues her search. Suddenly, a massive monster appears, shaking the ground with each step. The creature roars, causing even the commander to falter in fear. Princess Christina attempts a thunderball spell, but the monster deflects it. Alfonso suggests using Ice Lance, and the Vanguard enhances their abilities in preparation. The monster dodges the attack and retaliates fiercely. As the students scatter in panic, Alfonso orders a retreat, while Flora stays behind to heal the wounded. The monster menaces Flora, but Rio arrives just in time. He engages the beast, severing one of its arms, and orders Flora to evacuate with the injured. Rio battles intensely, eventually delivering a fatal blow to the monster's neck, causing it to vanish. He departs before the students can recognize him as their savior. An unknown observer watches Rio's battle from a distance, impressed by his fighting skills. Noting Rio's black hair, he concludes that Rio must be of Yagumo descent, which explains his ability to use spirit arts. Amused, the man leaves. Meanwhile, Professor Celia overhears Sir Alfred and Stuart plotting to blame Rio for the incident with Flora. Concerned, she contemplates the implications. Later, Rio visits Celia in her lab, apologizing for causing concern. Celia hugs him, checking for injuries. Rio reassures her that he's unharmed and explains the false accusations against him. Celia acknowledges his innocence, but reminds him that those in power often shape the narrative. Rio thanks Celia for her unwavering support and informs her that he's still planning to travel to the Yagumo region. Celia admits she had hoped to see him graduate, but respects his decision. Rio promises to write her letters under the alias Harud and hopes to see her again. They share a heartfelt goodbye. Elsewhere, Sir Alfred gives a captured girl a mission to remember the scent of her target Rio and kill him. He describes Rio's appearance, and the girl agrees to the mission. 3 days later, Rio reaches the market town of Galar in a neighboring kingdom. He sees a wanted poster with his face on it, realizing he's still being hunted, though he's relieved that Professor Celia is less likely to worry now. Exploring the town, Rio tries the local delicacy soup-style pasta and reminisces about past meals. The vendor mentions Lady Liselet, which sparks Rio's curiosity about her potential connection to his life. After eating, he heads to the merchant guild Liselet described. At the guild, Rio is greeted by a woman named Elle, who assists him with his purchases and offers him black tea. Rio remarks on the tea's unique flavor, and Elle explains that their guild's motto is to create an optimal environment for negotiations. Elle offers to deliver a letter for Rio, and he gladly accepts, writing to Professor Celia to let her know he's safe. He reassures her that no news of him means he is well. Before leaving, Rio overhears Elle and another guild member, Ket, discussing his mysterious nature, but they return to their tasks. Continuing through the forest, Rio encounters a girl in distress. He soon realizes she's the assassin sent after him. She injects him with poison, but Rio swiftly neutralizes it. Confronting her, Rio informs her that he won't allow her to kill him. A tense standoff ensues. The battle begins as Rio and the assassin, Latifa, dodge each other's attacks. Latifa enhances her speed with a physical enchantment, but Rio uses his flight ability to reach her, blocking her thrown weapons with his sword. Eventually, Rio disarms Latifa, slamming her to the ground. Panicking, Latifa screams for her mother, terrified of dying. Rio places a hand over her face, calming her until she falls unconscious. After tying her hands and legs, Rio removes the collar of submission from Latifa's neck, recalling a spell he read about that could break such enchantments. When Latifa wakes up, she's disoriented, and Rio explains that without the collar, she's free from control. Latifa begins crying, overwhelmed by her newfound freedom. Rio asks about about her orders and her master, but Latifa only knows her esteemed older brother is Stuart, a human. Rio deduces that Stuart is the same person from the academy, and that Duke Hugo orchestrated the plot to eliminate him. Latifa reassures Rio that no other assassins are targeting him. Rio gives Latifa the option to leave, advising her to head east to the wilderness, where demi-humans and beast people live. Latifa, uncertain of her path, expresses a desire to follow Rio. He clarifies that he spared her because it was more convenient, not out of compassion. Latifa, unsure whether to trust Rio, asks if she can rely on him. Rio warns her to be cautious, reminding her that he is still human, like those who enslaved her. Latifa, scared of being alone, asks for her collar back, but Rio refuses. He introduces himself properly, and she responds with her new name, Latifa. Rio prepares a meal for them, and Latifa cries as she tastes food like she's never had before. Rio comforts her, and they continue their journey. As they approach the wilderness, Rio suggests they camp for the night. Back at the academy, Professor Celia receives Rio's letter, feeling both relieved and sad, knowing she won't hear from him for a while. That evening, Rio cooks spaghetti, which Latifa enjoys, remarking that it reminds her of something she once ate. Rio, curious, wonders if Latifa's familiarity with the term spaghetti ties her to Haru's side of the world. As they rest, Latifa has nightmares, calling out for her family in Tokyo, waking Rio. He comforts her, and she reveals her longing for her home. The next morning, Latifa notices Rio's black hair and panics. Calling him Oni-chan as memories of her past resurface. She requests omelets with cheese for breakfast, stirring emotions in Rio. They spot a large, magical tree nearby, concealed from view. While Rio is curious, Latifa senses danger and begs to stay put. They decide to rest and proceed cautiously as their journey unfolds. While sitting by the campfire, Rio notices Latifa experiencing terrifying dreams. Using his magic, he soothes her. Suddenly, the campfire's light goes out. As Rio steps outside, he sees a wolf, which transforms into several demi-humans surrounded by blinding light. One of them, Uzuma, attacks Rio. Sensing their presence with spirit arts, Rio detects more demi-humans nearby. Sara instructs Uzuma to retreat after recognizing Rio's abilities. Rio tries to communicate, asking if they are demi-humans. Uzuma, with a cold disdain for humans, affirms they are, while Sara agrees to hear Rio out, but urges him not to call them demi-humans. Uzuma prepares for a worst-case scenario, instructing Oria and Alma to investigate the camp. Sara steps forward and agrees to hear Rio's intentions. He introduces himself and apologizes if he caused offense. Meanwhile, Oria and Alma discover Latifa, a child of the Beast People, asleep in the camp, noting that Rio used spirit arts to calm her. Uzuma, suspicious, approaches Rio and strikes him with a spear. Sara intervenes, reminding Uzuma that she's not authorized to attack. However, Uzuma believes Rio kidnapped one of their own and continues her assault. Rio, using spirit arts, heals himself and tries to explain that he was protecting Latifa, not harming her. Uzuma remains distrustful of a human's word. Alma casts magic that pins Rio's leg, and Uzuma electrocutes him until he falls unconscious. Rio awakens in a room, his hands bound, and calls out for help. Alma and Oria check on him, and Latifa, in tears, rushes to his side, fearing he might leave her. Sara and Uzuma enter the room with an elder, who apologizes for the misunderstanding and expresses a desire to learn more about Latifa. Latifa asks if they were responsible for Rio's restraints, to which Uzuma deeply apologizes. The elder reassures Rio that Uzuma and the others will take full responsibility for their actions, instructing Oria to release Rio's bindings. The elder informs him that a formal apology will be issued the next day, but offers him a modest room for now. Rio and Latifa accept graciously. The following morning, the elder guides Rio to the elder gathering. Along the way, Rio notices a large tree and asks about it. The elder explains it's the world tree, home to Draws, a powerful spirit. Rio realizes this tree has played a significant role in his journey and acknowledges its importance. The elder notes that the tree is protected by a high-level illusion magic barrier, making it invisible to those unfamiliar with spirit arts. Rio explains he has taught himself spirit arts, which intrigues the elder. At the elder gathering, Rio is welcomed and takes a seat. The elders introduce themselves, and Celora, the head elder, acknowledges the misunderstanding. She thanks Rio for rescuing one of their kin from slavery. The elders apologize sincerely for the trouble they caused. Rio, honored by their apology, suggests that the misunderstanding was his fault for accidentally entering their domain. He requests that they take care of Latifa, which Ursula, one of the elders, agrees to, stating it's their wish to express gratitude for his kindness. Rio bows in appreciation, and Ursula reassures him that they are the ones who owe him gratitude. Latifa, having become attached to her new surroundings, will be cared for by the demi-humans to ensure her safety and well-being. Ursula suggests Rio stay in the village for a while for Latifa's sake, and the elders agree. Ursula adds that Rio's presence won't be a burden, and Dominic, another elder, praises Rio, admitting he likes him. Celora promises to make Rio stay as comfortable as possible, and urges him to let them know if he needs anything. Dominic even jokes that Rio could marry one of their girls, but Ursula tells him not to get carried away. Rio expresses interest in learning more about spirit arts and other useful knowledge during his stay. Ursula assures him this won't be a problem, and Salora mentions they will find a skilled teacher for him. As the conversation winds down, a new voice interrupts. A ladylike figure appears behind Rio, and the elders recognize her immediately. She is Lady Draz, the spirit of the world tree. Lady Draz greets Rio and senses a faint spirit within him. She inquires if he knows anything about it, but Rio doesn't recall making a spirit covenant. Lady Draz explains that a spirit bond often complicates magic for humans and asks to investigate further. Rio consents. After examining him, Lady Draz reveals that Rio harbors a tremendous amount of Audi's spiritual energy and identifies a person-shaped spirit within him. She explains that such spirits belong to the second highest class or greater. The highest class spirits, the 6 great spirits, disappeared during the Divine Demon War over 1,000 years ago, suggesting that Rio's spirit might be one of these. Rio asks if this will cause problems. Lady Draz reassures him that it won't, but mentions it could be significant for the village's children. She notes that even though she is of a high spirit class herself, the villagers have deified her. The elders, overhearing this, reconsider their approach to Rio, possibly elevating him to saint status. Dominic advises Rio not to worry about these formalities and to enjoy the special treatment he's bound to receive. Lady Draz then escorts Rio to his new residence, where Latifa greets him with an excited hug. The house is lavish, featuring an open-air bath, a kitchen, and a stunning view. They are served orza grains, a Yagumo delicacy, which Latifa enjoys before falling asleep. Sarah, one of the villagers, asks Rio to choose a room, and he's confused. Sarah clarifies that 3 women will live with him and Latifa to take care of them. Latifa, surprised, is unsure how to respond when Lady Draz asks if she prefers them not to stay. Latifa hesitates, unsure of her feelings. Lady Ursula arrives to apologize to Rio for not informing him sooner about the ladies who would be staying with him and Latifa. She reassures Rio that the village is already aware of their presence and that it's important for them to be well cared for. Ursula whispers to Rio that, while interactions with higher-ups might be more troublesome, this arrangement is for Latifa's sake, as she needs both a guardian and a friend by her side. Rio appreciates the gesture, expressing his gratitude as long as it doesn't impose on Miss Sarah and the others. They smile and thank him, and Rio requests they stop addressing him as Sir. They switch to calling him Master Rio, which he seems to prefer. Rio and Latifa gradually integrate into village life, participating in daily activities, and Rio continues learning how to control his magic. Soon, the annual Grand Spirit Festival arrives. Villagers, including Rio and Latifa, gather at the shrine for the ritual to pray for blessings and divine protection. Lady Draz makes an appearance and the villagers cheer. Meanwhile, a mysterious man named Master Rice and his guard are seen descending into a cave. Master Rice retrieves a large egg, instructing his guard to be cautious as they leave. He mentions that the cave's master, who will be out hunting, won't return for some time. They mount a large bird, and Master Rice assures his guard that the distance to the Straw region is far enough that the parent won't pursue them. At the festival, Rio is welcomed as a sworn friend, and Latifa is celebrated as a new resident of the village with Lady Draz's blessing. The villagers feast, and Latifa, Sarah, and Oria are particularly affectionate toward Rio, though they seem a bit tipsy. Rio, feeling less social, hopes he'll do better in future gatherings. Lady Ursula comments that Latifa appears to be enjoying herself, and Rio agrees, noting how well she has integrated into village life. Later that night, Rio decides it's time to tell Latifa about his plan to leave soon. Lady Ursula expresses that she will miss him and that it might be too soon, but it also feels like the right time. Meanwhile, Master Rice and his guard camp in the forest, planning to depart for Straw in the morning. Master Rice ties a griffin to a tree and gives his guard a red artifact for protection. He emphasizes its importance and warns the guard to use it to signal his location if necessary before heading off, hoping the birds will come for the egg. Back in the village, Rio takes Latifa for a walk. She notices his silence and asks what's wrong. Rio apologizes and suggests they head back to the plaza, where there is still plenty of food and drink. He asks Latifa if she enjoys living in the village. Latifa responds that she loves it, especially because Rio is with her. Rio then tells her about his plan to leave soon. Latifa protests, saying she doesn't want to be separated from him. Rio explains that he's traveling to an unfamiliar place with potential dangers, which is why he can't bring her along. Latifa, frustrated, walks away. Meanwhile, Sarah reports to the elders about a suspicious reaction inside the village barrier, which Lady Draz also noticed. Elder Sora remarks that the reaction is more significant than expected. Sarah volunteers to investigate and is instructed by Lady Ursula to bring warriors along. Master Rice returns to the cave and finds a cache of eggs. He notes how the creatures left without guarding them, impressed by their speed but unimpressed by their intelligence. He begins collecting more eggs. Meanwhile, Uzuma detects more suspicious activity and Sarah asks for the location. Uzuma identifies 2 sources, one near the spring, a human, and another, a griffin. Sarah advises against engaging in combat immediately. They approach the area and find Master Rice. Sarah demands he surrender, asking what he's doing there. She notices an egg with him and asks about it. Master Rice brandishes a knife, cutting the rope binding the griffin, and flees with the creature. Uzuma requests permission to attack, and Sarah agrees, realizing it's unavoidable. They target the griffin, but it evades their attacks and heads toward the village as Master Rice escapes. At that moment, a flight of wyverns appears. Uzuma alerts Lady Sarah to the approaching wyverns, and she wonders why they've come. Aura speculates that the Eggmaster Rice head may be attracting them. Sarah decides they cannot allow the wyverns to reach the village and orders Alma and Oria to handle the black wyverns, while she and the others deal with the remaining ones. Alma sends someone to inform Mistress Ursula and the others of the impending threat. After collecting the eggs from the cave, Master Rice declares that the man's role is complete. He crushes a red substance in his hand, killing the man who falls from the eagle. Meanwhile, the wyvern begins pursuing the eagle. Sarah instructs Alma to deal with the black wyvern, and Alma requests Sarah to lend her bond spirit for assistance in the fight. As Latifa walks through the forest, reflecting on Rio's words, an egg suddenly drops from the sky, and a man crashes to the ground. Approaching the scene, Latifa finds the man dead beside a broken egg. A massive black wyvern, enraged by the broken egg, appears before her and roars. Meanwhile, Rio returns to the festival and finds it in chaos with people running in panic. He finds Dominic and asks what's happening. Dominic explains that the festival has been cancelled due to a flight of wyverns approaching. He adds that some are being held off in the forest, but the wyverns might arrive at the village soon. Rio immediately remembers Latifa and rushes into the forest to find her. The black wyvern attacks Latifa, slamming her into a tree and nearly burning her with its fiery breath. Elma arrives just in time to block the flames and pulls Latifa away. She chants a spell that summons a lion, then tells Latifa to stay back. The lion and a wolf engage the wyvern in combat, but the wyvern, alert, deflects the attacks and sends Elma crashing into a tree. Elma realizes the dire consequences if the wyverns reach the village. To buy time, Latifa attempts to distract the black wyvern, claiming to be a villager. The wyvern blocks her path with a tree and prepares to crush her. At that moment, Rio arrives, striking the wyvern and rescuing Latifa. Apologizing for the delay, he reassures Latifa before turning to face the wyvern. Rio battles the black wyvern with his bare hands. The wyvern attempts to breathe fire at him, but Rio casts a spell that causes the wyvern's head to explode, killing it. Sarah and the others arrive, praising Elma, but she points out that Rio single-handedly defeated the wyvern. One of the group suggests that the remaining wyverns retreated because their leader was slain. Sarah explains that wyverns are timid by nature and avoid battles they cannot win. Sarah thanks Rio for his help, while Rio and Latifa apologize to each other for not handling the situation better. Latifa admits she knew Rio might leave one day but was afraid of being a burden. Rio reassures her that she is neither a burden nor a hindrance and calls her his little sister. He then explains that he's heading east to the Yagumo region, where his late parents came from. Latifa, touched by his openness, reveals that she was once human and lived in Japan before being reincarnated. Rio, surprised, reveals that he too was from Japan. He shares his regrets but is determined to survive and grow stronger, which is another reason for his journey. Latifa vows to become stronger and wait for him. Before Rio departs, the elders honor him with gifts. Dominic presents him with a mithril sword that absorbs spirit arts and armor made from the black wyvern's hide, stronger than metal armor. Lady Ursula provides secret medicines and elixirs from the elves, and the beast people contribute food and drink. Though overwhelmed by the gifts, Rio expresses his gratitude. Elder Solora gives him a space-time cache, which Rio initially hesitates to accept, deeming it too valuable. Solora reminds him that he is a sworn friend of the village, and Rio accepts the gift, promising to return if the village faces danger. As Rio prepares to leave, Latifa and the villagers bid him farewell. He hugs Latifa tightly, asking the others to take care of her. After 2 weeks of traveling in the Yagumo region, Rio hasn't found any leads about his parents. He meets a group of farmers and introduces himself as a traveler searching for someone. A young woman named Ruri offers to help and leads him to her grandmother's house. Ruri introduces Rio to her grandmother, Yuba. Yuba, noticing Rio's unusual attire, listens as he explains that he's seeking information about his parents. Yuba introduces herself and asks for more details. Rio shares that his parents lived in the Yagumo region for over 15 years. Yuba recognizes the names Zen and Ayami, Rio's parents, and asks Ruri and Seo to return to their work before continuing the conversation. Yuba then asks Rio for more details about his past. Rio reveals that his father died when he was too young to remember and his mother passed away when he was 5. He explains that he came to Yagumo to find his parents' graves as he promised his mother he would visit their homeland. Yuba confirms she knew Rio's parents and takes him to their graves. Rio pays his respects, and Yuba explains that Zen and Ayame had to leave the country in secret and their graves were made by those who knew the truth. When Rio inquires about the reasons for their secret departure, Yuba says she cannot disclose them now but might in the future. She asks if Rio will stay in the village until then, and he agrees. Yuba also reveals that all her relatives have died, leaving only Ruri, who is Rio's cousin and 15 years old. Rio notes that Ruri is a year older than him, and Yuba comments on his maturity. Yuba suggests heading home, but Rio asks to stay at the grave a little longer. Yuba tells him to drop the formalities and warns him not to stay out too late. She also says she'll keep his lineage a secret for now. Despite the late hour, Yuba and Ruri have prepared dinner for him. The next morning, Rio wakes up early, eager to help around the village and start preparing breakfast. Yuba is pleased with his motivation. Ruri, forgetting that Rio is now staying with them, comes out with her body partially uncovered. When she notices Rio, she quickly retreats to her room, realizing her lapse. Yuba reminds her that there are now other people in the house. While Rio is preparing breakfast, Yuba mentions that Ruri will make miso soup, but they're short on ingredients. Ruri informs them that Sei and Shin will be visiting and directs Rio to use water from another container that's refilled daily with spirit arts. Rio decides to use spirit magic to heat the water, impressing Ruri, who notes that even her grandmother can't do that. Rio offers to teach her the trick if she's interested, and she eagerly agrees. Sei and Shin arrive shortly after, and breakfast is served. Yuba introduces them to Rio. Everyone enjoys the meal, and Ruri praises Rio for preparing everything. They are surprised and pleased with the meal. Rio offers them more food if they're still hungry. After the meal, Yuba asks Shin to take Rio to Dio's place because she's considering having Rio become a hunter. Dio needs help, and Yuba believes Rio, with his travels and spirit art skills, is strong enough for the job. Shin is skeptical about Rio's stamina for the grueling work, but Yuba argues that Rio's experience and skills make him more than capable. Shin agrees to take Rio hunting but warns him not to be a hindrance. While Rio and Shin are out hunting, they manage to catch more animals than usual. Dio notes that they'll have more meat for the village than expected. Rio ends up taking down more animals than Shin, leading Shin to feel that Rio and Dio are the real contributors. However, Rio insists that their success is due to teamwork. Shin leaves in frustration, but Dio says he'll speak with Shin and ask if Rio can start helping from the next day. Rio agrees and, after returning home, uses spirit arts to create a bathing area with soap and water. Seo and Ruri are surprised and ask if he used spirit arts to make it. Rio confirms and offers to clean up afterward, but Ruri says it's not necessary. They both enjoy his new scent and ask him about it. When Shin and his friends see the setup, they ask about it. Seo explains that Rio created the bath. Shin starts to develop resentment toward Rio, accusing him of showing off. Ruri and Seo defend Rio, with Ruri noting that despite his appearance, Rio is quite strong. Shin is left embarrassed and speechless. Next, Rio helps with farming, attracting attention from the village women. Yuba is pleased with a good crop yield and asks Rio for a favor. After the annual tribute and rationing, the remaining rice will be sold in the royal capital, and Yuba asks Rio to guard the transport team. Rio agrees. Suddenly, some boys run into town shouting that Gan, the son of the neighboring village's head, and his men have come to cause trouble. Gan and his men attempt to assault Ruri and Seo, but Shin and his group intervene to defend them. Gan claims his cart broke down on the way to the royal capital and needs time to repair it. Ruri offers him one of their guest huts, but Gan, with a smirk, suggests it might be because she's interested in him. He sees Shin's involvement as jealousy and challenges him. Shin, angered, tries to attack Gan, but is restrained by Gan, who grabs him by the neck until Yuba and Rio arrive to intervene. Yuba apologizes for Shin's behavior and blames Gan for his impudent actions. Yuba offers Gan a guest hut at the village's edge with the condition that he must remain there. Gan agrees, and as he and his men are leaving, they bump into Rio. Gan, distracted, accidentally falls into Rio. Rio asks if he's okay, but Gan doesn't respond and quickly departs. Yuba reassures everyone, instructing them to return quietly to their homes and informing them that Gan and his men are forbidden from leaving the hut. Shin asks Yuba if Seo can stay with her for a while. Although it's just the two of them living together, Shin believes Seo would feel safer with Yuba and Rio. Yuba agrees. That night, Rio gives Ruri and Seo protective amulets, which they gratefully accept. Meanwhile, Gan and his men discuss their plans to ensure their cart is thoroughly broken, so they'll have a whole day to repair it at their leisure. Gan adds that the real fun will come afterward. The next day, a tax examiner named Saga Hayate and his men arrive at Madame Yuba's village. Yuta welcomes them, and Rio introduces himself and extends a warm welcome. Hayate inspects the crops and joins them for a meal, which he enjoys. Outside, Rio trains without his shirt, using a sword. Noticing he's being watched, he remarks that observing him like that can't be much fun. Ruri smiles and praises his technique. She inquires about his interest in martial arts, and Rio hesitates, feeling embarrassed. Ruri and Seo are eager to know more, so Rio puts on his shirt and explains that he started training to become strong enough to protect a girl he liked when he was younger. Ruri asks about the girl's current situation, but Rio says they've lost touch. He speculates that she might be with someone else now and isn't sure if she remembers him. Ruri suggests they might meet again someday if she's still alive. Rio concludes that he now trains for his own sake. That night, while Seo and Ruri are asleep, Gan sneaks into their room. Ruri wakes and sees him. Gan quickly covers her mouth and warns that he's responsible for what happens if she struggles. Seo wakes up, sees them, and warns Gan to behave, or he'll get punched by Rio. Gan hears his men being knocked down, and a light flashes as Rio bursts in. Rio confronts Gan in the same spot where Gan's mother was killed. He overpowers Gan, pinning him with his leg against his heart until Gan begs him to stop. Rio then sits on Gan, pounding his face repeatedly until Lord Hayate intervenes to prevent a killing blow. Yuba takes the girls away from the scene, and Lord Hayate seeks punishment for Gan and his men from the kingdom. He orders a messenger to be sent. This is the second time Rio has felt a desire to kill, and he's been subconsciously drawn closer to Amakawa Haruto. He hits his fist against a tree, lamenting his focus on revenge despite being similar to the man he despises. The following morning, they receive word that a messenger from the kingdom will arrive, and Gan and his men will be taken into custody. Rio apologizes for the trouble he's caused, and Yuba thanks him for protecting Ruri and Seo. The group enjoys breakfast together, and with Lord Hayate's intervention, Gan and his men will be sent to the royal capital's prison camp, allowing Yuba's transport team to set out safely. Yuba expresses her deep gratitude to Lord Hayate, who humbly responds that he was merely fulfilling his duties. Yuba then requests a favor to personally deliver an important letter to his esteemed father, Lord Gyue. Hayate agrees to help and bids them farewell, including Rio. Several days later, they arrive at the royal capital of Karasuki and find accommodations. Yuri advises them to go out with a local guide to avoid getting lost. He asks Shin and Ryo to join him, and they agree. Yuri takes them to a restaurant where he playfully ruffles Shin's hair, telling him it's time for a change of emotions. Shin, embarrassed, asks Yuri to stop, noting that Ryo is watching. The waiter serves them large portions of kutan, a dish Ryo hasn't heard of before. Shin explains that it will quickly become a favorite once he tries it, sharing how he first experienced it. He adds that slurping the kutan dynamically is the classy way to enjoy it. DOA advises Ryo to eat his food while it's still hot, warning him that it might get soggy otherwise. Ryo enjoys the meal. After finishing, Shin and Ryo leave the restaurant. Shin thanks Ryo for saving Seo and mentions that he needs to ensure his sister gets a chance to eat there as well, to avoid any future conflicts. Ryo and Seo are sent on an errand. Ryo asks Seo if she would like to grab some kutan after they're done. He explains that Shin suggested he take her if possible, as they've previously had a disagreement over making it because Seo had never heard of it before. Ryo explains that Shin simply wants to give her a chance to try it while they chat. A souvenir vendor approaches Ryo, suggesting he buy a gift for his cute girlfriend. Seo quickly corrects her, saying they are not a couple. The vendor remarks that they look great together and invites them to check out a souvenir from the capital. Ryo asks Seo if there's anything she wants, but she declines, saying she's fine. Ryo insists she shouldn't mind, given all she's done for him. The vendor advises Seo that accepting the gift graciously is a sign of courtesy. Seo chooses a fine item, and when the vendor asks Ryo for his opinion, he says it suits her. The vendor then quotes a price of 2 lesser silver tablets. Seo seems hesitant, but the vendor offers a small discount when she notices her reaction. Ryo, however, prefers not to haggle over a gift and agrees to the price. The vendor thanks him and comments that she wished she had set a higher price. As Ryo and Seo prepare to leave, the vendor whispers to Seo to do her best to win him over, hinting at competition for his affections. Suddenly, a commotion occurs as a group of men tries to abduct a woman. A bystander attempts to help but is unable to reach the scene. Ryo arrives, chases down the assailant, and rescues the woman. He checks on Seo, who confirms she's fine. The other woman, revealed to be Lady Como, has subdued another attacker. Ryo assesses that Lady Como is unconscious but not in serious danger. The woman apologizes for her ineptitude, and Ryo tells her to convey his apologies to Lady Como when she awakens. Ryo then quickly leaves with Seo to avoid further trouble. Lord Guki reports to Lord Hayate about the near abduction of Lady Como and the young man who intervened. He reminds Hayate that he wanted to speak privately. Hayate produces a letter from Lady Yuba and gives it to Lord Guki. Upon reading it, Lord Guki inquires if Hayate has met someone named Ryo. Meanwhile, Ryo and Seo return from their errand and encounter others cleaning horses. Seo mentions to her brother that the kutan was delicious, and Shin promises to make some for him when they return to the village. Shin notices a hairpin in Seo's hair and asks about it, but she is unsure of its origin. Ryo decides to put away their purchases and is addressed as Lord Ryo by Lord Hayate, his wife Kyoko, and a man bowing to him. The man introduces himself as Saga Guki and his wife Kyoko. Guki explains that he and his wife were once attendants to Ryo's mother, Lady Karasuki Ayame. Guki reveals that Ryo's mother was from the royal family of the kingdom of Karasuki. Guki recounts how, 20 years ago during a war with the neighboring kingdom of Raren, Ryo's father Zen was a skilled soldier who earned the rank of warrior noble. Guki had once sparred with Zen and was impressed by his skills, which led him to recommend Zen as a guard for the royal family. Lady Amy, who had a fondness for Zen, was involved in a political marriage proposal with the prince from Raren. When the prince's attendant was killed by Zen, it led to a demand for Zen's execution and a political marriage to Lady Amy to finalize the truce. Even now, Guki speaks with a shiver, confessing that the mere thought of certain individuals makes his blood boil. Ryo inquires whether this was why his mother and father fled together. Guki confirms that it was indeed arranged secretly by His Majesty the King. The couple left their homeland, and time passed with no word from them. Recently, however, Guki received a letter from Lady Yuba, and upon seeing their esteemed faces, he is convinced without a doubt that you are their son. Guki requests that Ryo visit the castle the following day, as it is the king and queen's dearest wish to meet him. Ryo agrees to come the next day. Upon arriving at the castle, he meets King Hura and Queen Shizuku. King Hura suggests that since they are meeting their beloved grandchild, Ryo should feel free to be less formal. Ryo agrees, provided they allow him to do so, and they offer him a seat. Queen Shizuku remarks that Ryo resembles Aim exactly, to which Ryo replies that she too looks just like his mother. The queen then asks Ryo to share what he knows about Aim and Zen, preferring to hear the unembellished truth. Ryo reveals that both his parents have passed away. King Hura expresses interest in learning how they lived and died. Ryo recounts that he was too young to know his father well, but his mother was a kind woman who always smiled, hiding her grief over her father's death. They were not wealthy, but their days were filled with happiness. When she died, King Hura inquires about the manner of her death. Ryo admits that the truth is deeply painful. His mother was killed right in front of him by a man named Lucius. Lucius, who had been an ally of his father and had helped them after his father's death, murdered his mother after she had told Ryo not to open the door. Ryo recounts how Lucius attacked him and then killed his mother in front of him, leaving him alone in the slums. He survived there as an orphan until he was 7, when an incident involving a person of importance to the kingdom allowed him to attend a prestigious school. Despite harsh treatment from some students, others treated him kindly, allowing him to stay in the school until he was 12. He then ventured to the land his mother had promised to show him. King Hura remarks that both his parents must have harbored deep resentment. Rio replies that while his mother might have been grateful for marrying his father, she could not hate them for that. The one person he cannot forgive is Lucius. King Hura asks if Rio seeks revenge, and Rio admits that while revenge once drove him, it ultimately leads nowhere. However, he would not hesitate to take action if he ever encountered Lucius. King Hura advises that pursuing revenge will only lead to hell, but he won't prevent Rio from trying. He does, however, suggest that Rio should spar with Guki to gain the strength needed for facing Lucius one day. When Rio and Guki return home, they encounter Lady Como, Guki's daughter, whom Rio had previously saved. Both Guki and his wife are delighted and surprised. A duel is set up between Guki and Rio, officiated by Kyoko, with the king and queen in attendance. The match showcases impressive sword skills from both sides. Guki uses his hidden skill, First Blade Air Splash, but Rio counters with his spirit art. The bout ends with Rio emerging victorious, impressing the king and queen. King Hura asks if Rio has any wishes, to which Rio replies that he has a cousin in the village where he has been staying. He wishes to inform her of his royal lineage. The king agrees to leave this decision to Rio's judgment, and Rio expresses his gratitude. Back in the village, Ruri cannot find them. Sayo calls Ruri to look up at the mountain, where he confesses to his parents that he can no longer run or protect what's precious without accepting the ugliness within himself. That evening, Yuba and Rio reveal to Ruri that Rio is her cousin. Initially shocked, Ruri jokes about the surprising news. Yuba clarifies that while Rio's royal status is not officially recognized, he is indeed of royal lineage. Ruri apologizes for her rudeness and bows to Rio, but Yuba tells her to forgo the formalities. Ruri asks if she can call him simply Rio, and he agrees, hoping their relationship will continue. Ruri finds it awkward to be addressed as Miss Ruri and prefers a more casual address, which Rio agrees to, though he mentions it might take some time for him to get accustomed to it. Rio tells Yuba and Ruri that he plans to leave the village by the same time next year. Yuba expresses that he will be missed, but understands his decision. She asks if he intends to return to his homeland, and Rio confirms he does, but he also wants to visit other places along the way. Ruri inquires if he will return to the village again someday, and Rio says he would like to if permitted. Ruri assures him he is always welcome, and Yuba adds that he is a part of the village and can return anytime. Ruri speculates that since Rio plans to visit somewhere, someone might be waiting for him there. Rio mentions that although they are not blood relatives, there is someone who regards him as an older brother. Rio meets with Ruri and Xiao at their usual spot, addressing Ruri as agreed. He notes that he hasn't had a chance to properly greet everyone since his return and wishes to visit each person. Ruri notices the expressions on Seo and the other women's faces and asks what's wrong. Seo explains that a lady questioned why Rio is speaking to Ruri so informally. Ruri clarifies that since they live in the same house, she asked Rio to drop the formalities. Other women express envy, wishing they could be on such terms with Rio. Rio continues with his daily activities in the village and enjoys his time with the locals. Ruri informs him that she has planted the seedlings as instructed. Rio praises her and advises her to assist others who haven't finished. Du comments on Ruri's hard work, suggesting she will make a good bride. Rio agrees and they share a laugh. Ruri, however, requests that they not joke about such matters. Rio approaches Miss Seo, offering to help her, but she continues planting and says she isn't paying attention. Rio tells her to remember everything he has taught her and mentions that he would like to oversee everyone in the village during his absence. Seo pauses, and Rio explains that his departure depends on whether things proceed well. Seo asks if he's leaving the village, and he confirms he plans to depart around the end of the Harvest Festival this fall. She asks if he will stay nearby and return regularly, but he says he plans to travel across the country, making regular returns uncertain. He feels it's better to inform her well in advance. Seo appears worried but tries to hide it, claiming dirt from her hands got into her eyes. Rio uses his water spirit art to help her clean her face. Ruri asks what happened, and Seo explains the same story she told Rio. She then decides to finish her planting, with Ruri offering to help. Back at home, Seo bursts into tears. Shin finds her crying and, suspecting Rio is the cause, prepares to confront him. Seo reassures him that Rio did nothing wrong but is simply leaving the village. Shin rushes to Madame Yuba's place to beg Rio to stay. He acknowledges that his request is selfish but implores Rio not to leave. Seo arrives, apologizes for her brother's behavior, and they both return home. At the Harvest Festival, everyone enjoys the celebrations. Madame Yuba invites the Guki family to join in the festivities. Guki decides to hold a challenge, stating that rank and size are irrelevant. Some cheer for Guki, while others push Du onto the stage to compete with him, despite his reluctance. Guki wins the challenge, and Rio shares Kutan with everyone. Ruri invites Como to join them for Kutan, and Rio thanks Lady Kyoko for her assistance. to which she responds that it was the least she could do. Seo asks for a private moment with Rio, and they move away from the party to talk. Rio notices the hairpin and comments that she's still using it. As their conversation turns serious, she confesses her love for Rio. Rio feels regretful but explains that he cannot reciprocate her feelings. When she asks if his departure is the reason, he confirms it's part of it but not the sole reason. She then suggests that he should take her with him. Rio replies that it's not possible, despite her assurance that she has worked hard to avoid being a burden, having trained her body and spirit arts diligently for the last 6 months. She promises to do everything in her power to not hinder him. Rio insists that it's not about her being a burden and reiterates his apologies for not returning her feelings. Tears stream down her face as she accepts his decision, saying that even if he never acknowledges her or does anything for her, she simply wants to stay by his side. She holds his hand, but Rio, feeling sorry, gently releases it and departs. He notices Shin watching and quietly apologizes to Master Shin before continuing. As Rio prepares to leave, he thanks Madame Yuba, and Ruri. Madame Yuba advises him not to set out in the dark, but Rio explains that he bade farewell to everyone in the village the day before, and that the journey will be lengthy. Ruri tells him he can always come back, and the villagers wish him a safe trip. At the village border, CEO waits for Rio. Reflecting on Lord Guki's advice and the tears she shed when Rio departed, she wishes him well and urges him to look after himself. Rio reassures her that he will and expresses hope for her to do the same. She promises to work hard and give her best, and they shake hands and bid farewell, hoping for a future reunion. Upon returning, Rio receives a warm welcome from Latifa, who hugs him tightly. He updates the elders about his experiences, mentioning that his grandmother and cousin are eager to meet Latifa. Latifa expresses her interest in meeting them as well. Elder Solora asks how long Rio plans to stay, and he estimates a few months, promising to return sooner next time. Elder Ursula inquires if he needs anything, and Rio mentions a desire to construct a portable house using space-time magic. Dominic finds this idea intriguing, but Ursula suggests that a foundation-free house would be necessary and that spirit arts might be needed. Elder Solora cautions that once Rio commits to this project, he might be away for a while. Ursula advises Rio to leave the house project to Dominic and to spend as much time as possible with Latifa and the others. After discussing matters with the elders, Rio meets with the ladies. Sarah asks if his conversation with the eldest went well, to which Rio confirms, noting that everyone seems as lively as ever. Sarah comments on how mature Rio appears, and Oria observes that Elma and Sarah seem slightly shy around him, though they deny it. Rio praises Alma and Sarah for their maturity and beauty, and tells Oria that her calm demeanor has grown even stronger. Latifa then invites him to join them for a bath, which is met with a chorus of course not from the ladies. Rio wakes up to find a naked woman beside him, causing him to panic. The ladies rush in, astonished by the situation. Rio attempts to explain, but they are curious about the woman. Sarah clarifies that it's simply a misunderstanding. Rio is just sleeping next to a naked woman. Latifa asks the woman's identity, and Rio awakens her. She introduces herself as a spirit who has formed a covenant with Haruto, recalling Lady Jiraiya's description of bonded spirits. Rio asks the lady about the process of forming a covenant, but she is unsure. He mentions that she taught him spirit arts when he was younger, yet she still has no answers. Rio then inquires about her sudden appearance, but she is uncertain as well. He wonders if this is the usual manifestation of a bonded spirit, and Miss Sarah explains that bonded spirits aren't typically person-shaped, making it unclear. Turning to the lady, Rio asks for her name, but she admits she doesn't know. She expresses a wish for a name as she is by Haruto's side. Rio questions why he should name her, and she responds that it's because she exists for him. Oria points out that the lady has been calling him Haruto, but Rio says he will explain later. The lady communicates telepathically with Rio, revealing that she knows everything about him. She confirms she can only speak to him and asks if it's alright to call him Rio instead. Rio agrees to either name and asks if she's comfortable with him naming her. She insists on having a name from him. As he contemplates this, he feels overwhelmed by the rapid pace of events. Sarah suggests consulting the elders and Lady Jirai for advice. Elma notes that Lady Jirai, being a person-shaped spirit, might offer valuable guidance. Rio turns to the lady, asking if she would accompany him. She stands up, and a beautiful dress magically envelops her, surprising everyone. She mentions that she chose the dress from Odd and Mana. When the name Aishia slips from Rio's lips, the lady appears pleased. She explains that in their village's ancient language, it means warm springtime or beautiful springtime. Rio feels the name suits her, and she admits she likes it, drawing a parallel between spring and the Haru and Haruto. Elder Dominic is the first to welcome Aishia and suggests treating her like an older sister, with others following suit. At the council hall, they decide to inform the elders about the sudden awakening of Rio's bonded spirit. The elders are curious as to why the spirit has lost her memory. As Rio starts to explain his covenant with the spirit, Lady Jirai arrives, sensing a powerful spirit's presence within the village's barrier. She recognizes the spirit and introduces herself. Lady Jirai explains that it is usual for person-shaped spirits to retain memories from before their elevation. She asks Aishia if she recalls what type of spirit she was, and Aishia identifies herself as Haro's bonded spirit. This raises questions about Haro's identity. Rio admits there is an issue with Haro, revealing that he is known as Harrod in the Straw region and is being pursued by authorities. Lady Jirai suggests identifying Aishia's element by asking her what she excels at. Aishia claims proficiency in all all elements, surprising everyone, including Lady Draz. They decide to test Aishia's power by setting up a duel between her and Rio. He holds a stone and indicates that the battle will begin when the stone hits the ground. The stone is thrown and the fight commences. Aishia's fighting style is swift, and Rio wonders if she is mimicking techniques. The battle is fierce, with both utilizing various spirit arts, including one that Alma recognizes as effective against the Black Wyvern. They unleash massive tornadoes, prompting Lady Draz to intervene to prevent damage to the village. From the performance, it is evident that Aishia can handle all elements, but Lady Draz notes that she is using only a fraction of her power and considers her currently unsafe. She offers to teach Aishia about spirits. Elder Solora formally welcomes Aishia on behalf of the spirit community. A feast is held to celebrate Aishia's arrival, and Rio shows her around the village. Elder Dominic escorts Rio and others to the newly constructed house, which boasts various facilities, including a stone-lined bath. He informs Rio that as long as a foundation is established with spirit arts, the house can be moved. Rio expresses his gratitude, and Elder Dominic advises him not to act like strangers. Realizing he needs to show his respect to the elders, Rio prepares to leave. Latifa inquires about his departure time, and Rio responds, "The day after tomorrow, Elder Dominic will notify the other elders, and they will gather at the council hall." Once inside the new house, Rio observes Sarah's demeanor and feels remorseful about his sudden departure. Sarah suggests spending the night with Latifa. In the bath, Rio reflects on his thoughtlessness. He has been focused on his spirit arts training since Aishia's awakening, neglecting his time with Latifa. Latifa arrives in a bath towel, intending to wash his back before his departure. Though Rio feels uncomfortable with her attire, he permits it. Latifa reveals that her name was Endo Suzune in Japan, and explains that Aishia calls her Hiro, which was Rio's alias in the Straw region. Rio shares that his Japanese name was Amakawa Haruto before reincarnation. Latifa confides that she once wished for a big brother who took the same bus as her, but they were involved in a bus accident. She expresses that Rio is a wonderful brother, though he feels inadequate for not being with her. Latifa hugs him and asks him to return to the village. He promises to come back if she's waiting for him. She happily agrees and jokes about whether he needs more rinsing. Rio mentions his tasks in the Straw region, and Latifa acknowledges them. The next morning, as Rio prepares to depart, he is escorted by the elders and other ladies. Elder Ursula gives him a teleportation crystal for easy return to the village, while Elder Dominic provides a magical item to change his hair color for disguise. Lady Draz reminds Aishia not to forget her teachings. Rio asks Sarah to look after his little sister, and Latifa insists she's no longer a child. They all wish him a safe journey. On his way to the Straw region, Rio mentions needing to meet someone, and Aishia suggests Celia. Rio confirms he hasn't been in touch since his first letter. Back at Beltram Academy, Celia, holding a letter from Rio, wonders about his safety. Lord Charles surprises her by asking why she won't call him darling. She shyly declines, and he hopes she will change over time. One of Charles's guards calls him away, and he departs. Rio and Aishia arrive at Beltram. Noticing the crowd, Rio uses a magical earring to change his hair color. They stop at a shop where a woman explains that the crowd is due to a noble wedding parade the next day, hosted by Duke Arbor's house. Rio plans to visit the academy next, and Aishia decides to accompany him, considering her spirit form's potential usefulness. At night, they reach the academy and land on a roof. They enter through a window with Aishia's help. They find Celia's lab empty, leading Rio to suspect she may have moved. He considers asking researchers in other rooms, and Aishia offers to handle it. They locate another lab, and when the man inside answers the door, Aishia uses her spirit form to obscure Rio's presence. Rio learns that Celia is at the royal palace and is set to marry Lord Charles of House Duke Arbor, leaving him stunned. Shocked by the news of Celia's marriage to Charles Arbor, Rio asks Charles for details on how this came about. Charles explains that during the last conflict, the kingdom of Beltram suffered a severe defeat by the Proxia Empire. The House of Duke Arbor managed to negotiate a fragile peace, but the royal family lost much of its power and authority. Consequently, Duke Huguenot's faction had to flee the royal capital. The House of Duke Arbor has since aligned with the House of Count Clare to regain strength. Aishia inquires if the House of Count Clare is seeking this political marriage, but Charles admits he doesn't have that information. Aishia steps outside to speak with Rio on the roof and asks about his plan. Rio decides he needs to speak with Celia in person before the wedding, even though the castle will likely have tight security. Aishia offers to use her spirit form to investigate. Rio warns that spirit forms are magical and might be detected by the castle's defenses, but Aishia assures him she can see barriers designed to detect magic. She mentions she knows what Celia looks like and departs. Rio expresses his trust in her. At the castle, Lord Charles, Celia, and her father are having dinner. Celia's father apologizes for his absence, which Celia attributes to his busy schedule. Lord Charles addresses Count Clare as father and reassures him that the wedding preparations are complete. Count Clare comments on the event's scale, and Lord Charles confirms that it's a significant marriage between their houses. Count Clare expects impeccable security and has assembled the best from the Royal Guard and Mage Corps. Despite Despite his earlier concerns, Count Claire feels reassured. Lord Charles, however, expresses unease about Count Claire, noting rumors that some nobles have been secretly contacting Duke Huguenot. Count Claire denies these rumors, but Lord Charles acknowledges that trust in him has been shaken. He reassures Count Claire that his marriage to Celia is partly to protect his own position. Lord Charles then mentions that Count Claire will soon serve as commander and director of the House of Duke Arbor, a statement that feels like a veiled threat, but one that Count Claire reluctantly accepts. They toast to the peace and prosperity of both houses, and Celia vows to fully commit herself to Lord Charles. The wedding ceremony is eagerly anticipated. High above the castle, Rio observes the strong defenses in place for the upcoming wedding. Aishia, communicating telepathically, informs Rio that she has located Celia outside the palace. She directs him to start at the main gate on the left and proceed towards a large building. Inside her room, Celia reflects on the limited time she and her father have spent together and prepares to accept her new role as Lord Charles's wife. She takes out a letter from Rio, wishing she could see him again. At that moment, Rio enters the room, revealing his true identity by removing his head covering and using a magical earring to revert his hair color to black. Celia is astonished and drops the letter as she embraces Rio tightly. They both express how much they've missed each other. Celia notices Rio's growth and comments on his handsomeness, while Rio praises her beauty. They share a heartfelt moment, and Celia expresses her relief at his safety. Celia asks how Rio managed to enter her room, and he responds with a smile. She then asks about his trip to the Yagumo region and suggests having tea together, just like old times. While preparing the tea, she confirms that she is indeed marrying Charles Arbor. Rio, feeling regretful for asking, is relieved when Celia assures him that it is an agreed-upon arrangement. She explains that while Charles Arbor might seem unfortunate, he is chivalrous and kind. Celia then playfully teases Rio about marrying her instead, or taking her away, but quickly dismisses the idea, suggesting they forget it. She urges him to leave before her caretakers arrive and warns him to be careful not to get caught. She gives him 20 seconds to leave and threatens to scream if he doesn't depart promptly. As she pushes him out, Rio manages to slip away just in time. Celia is glad to have seen him once more before the wedding. As promised, Celia decides to conclude things with a final goodbye to Rio, wanting to keep him out of the complications. Rio, uncertain about his next steps, expresses his desire to understand the motives behind the wedding. Aishia offers to assist, but Rio apologizes, feeling he's relying too much on her. She reassures him that she has always been by his side and can be approached anytime. On the wedding day, Rio visits Charles Arbor to offer his congratulations. Charles inquires about Rio's arrival time, and Rio replies that he has just arrived. Charles expresses regret for not being prepared for Sir Rio's visit, saying he would have provided a proper welcome if he had known. Rio asks Charles to keep his visit discreet to avoid drawing unwanted attention. Charles invites Rio to his home after the ceremony, but Rio explains he will visit another day as tonight is his first night together. As they converse, Rio senses a powerful presence, but is interrupted when Charles calls his name. Rio assures him everything is fine and decides to head to the ceremony hall early. Charles directs a guard to escort him. Celia, elegantly dressed, admires herself in the mirror. When her name is called, she steps out to be warmly greeted by Charles and others who admire her appearance. Charles introduces her to his wives, including his first wife, Tanina, who warns Celia that despite her higher social standing as the daughter of Count Calais, her rank among the wives will be low as his seventh wife. Tanina emphasizes that impertinent behavior will not be tolerated. Celia accepts these terms and hopes the older wives will be kind to her. Tanina comments on Celia's complexion, suggesting she smile more. Suddenly, Celia's maid announces the arrival of Princess Christina, the realm's first princess. Celia requests her immediate entry. Tanina disapproves of Celia's attention to her maid, but receives an apology from Celia. The maids and other wives honor Princess Christina as she enters. Christina apologizes for the unannounced visit, and Celia thanks her for coming. Christina compliments Celia's wedding dress, and Tanina invites her to relax. Christina expresses a wish to speak with her former teacher, Professor Celia, privately. Tanina quickly apologizes and takes the other ladies with her. Christina offers her congratulations on behalf of her parents and praises Celia's appearance, noting she seems a bit better. Celia explains her nervousness and trouble sleeping the night before. She thanks Christina for her support, which has helped her look presentable today. Christina confesses to being confined in the palace for a long time and acknowledges the strict scrutiny of Duke Arbor's faction. She believes Flora shares this sentiment. Celia agrees, noting the pain of Duke Huguenot's flight with Princess Flora and the resulting loss of faith in the royal family. Christina expresses regret over these circumstances, but Celia assures her there's no need for apologies as the wedding is her choice. Christina reflects on how Celia used to be so visibly happy during their academy days and laments that Celia now seems trapped. She promises to do everything in her power to help Celia regain her former smile if given the chance. Celia thanks Christina and hopes for a future reunion with Princess Flora. Meanwhile, Lord Charles and Alfred discuss Alfred's esteemed position as the kingdom's strongest warrior. Charles acknowledges Alfred's skills but notes that he must follow orders regarding the security of the ceremony. Alfred commits to his duties. Charles advises him to remain discreet, and Alfred agrees. The wedding ceremony between Professor Celia and Charles Arbor begins, with people from across the kingdom celebrating and welcoming the union. As the car cart carrying Celia rolls along. Shielded by the cart's cover and surrounded by the army's forces, people catch glimpses of her dress through the shade. They start calling her the Silver Bride. Lord Charles comments that although Silver Bride may originate from ignorance, it highlights Celia's undeniable beauty. He eagerly anticipates the moment when Celia will be his, imagining the kiss that will seal their vows. He gestures to a soldier on horseback, who then proclaims, "Long live the House of Arbor," prompting a chorus of cheers from the assembled forces and the people of the kingdom. Lord Charles confidently declares that one day, this kingdom will be his, and Celia will be his wife. As the cart approaches, Aishia informs Rio of the unfolding situation, calming him with her presence. Aishia speaks to Celia, who is waving to the cheering crowd. She introduces herself and informs Celia that Rio has sent her. Celia looks to her right and spots Rio among the crowd, leading her to question his presence since she had asked him not to come. She becomes emotional, saying seeing Rio here is the last thing she wanted. Lord Charles notices her distress and asks about it. Celia hesitates, mentioning that overwhelming emotions have surfaced. Lord Charles, unaware of the depth of her feelings, advises her to maintain her dignity as everyone is watching. Celia glances back, but Rio has vanished. She attempts to reach out to Aishia telepathically, but receives no response, beginning to doubt the situation's reality. The cart halts, and Lord Charles stands, extending his hand to help Celia down. Just as she is about to take his hand, soldiers shout halt. There's an intruder. The intruder turns out to be Rio. At top speed, Rio navigates through the soldiers, fending off those who attempt to block him. A soldier on horseback commands the troops to form a defensive line, and the soldiers prepare their spears. Rio uses his magic to clear them out. The soldier on horseback orders the mage squad to contain him, and they cast a photon bullet spell, which Rio skillfully dodges while soaring over the soldiers. The soldier on horseback directs some soldiers to protect the bride and groom, preparing to engage Rio. Despite their efforts, Rio overcomes all the soldiers. As he looks up, he sees Lord Charles and charges at him, landing a powerful punch to his chest. Rio then draws a knife and threatens to harm Celia. Count Claire, worried for his daughter's safety, tries to intervene but is restrained by a soldier. Duke Arbor also attempts to move but is stopped by another soldier. Rio communicates with Celia telepathically, apologizing for the chaos and asking her to explain the situation. He instructs her to concentrate her thoughts so that her voice can reach him. Lord Charles, now on the ground, questions Rio's intentions. Rio crushes his back with his leg, stating he has a grievance and threatening to break his spine. Celia pleads with Rio to stop, and he assures her he won't kill anyone, but is creating a disturbance for a reason. Sir Alfred orders the soldiers to escort the guests to safety. Rio tells Celia that time is running out and asks her once more about her true intentions. Though Celia hesitates to answer directly, Rio deduces that Duke Arbor's house is pressuring her into this marriage. Rio promises that whatever her wish is, it will be fulfilled. Celia expresses concern that prioritizing her feelings might cause trouble for others and questions if it's the right thing to do. Rio is unsure but believes that if the wedding were truly right for her, she wouldn't be so distressed. He begs her not to give up. When she asks what his plans are if she refuses to marry, he says he will take her away and escape, ensuring no questions about her father's involvement will arise. Celia notices they are surrounded by soldiers. Rio reassures her not to worry and vows to make her wish come true. He remarks that such promises are expected from someone with a knife at her throat. Celia then urges Rio to take her away. Rio confronts Lord Charles, declaring his intention to abduct his bride publicly. He grabs Celia and flees, with her calling out Lord Charles. In response, Lord Charles orders all troops to pursue and capture Rio, while Sir Alfred instructs them to withhold any information. Lord Charles commands his soldiers to capture Rio immediately. The soldiers give chase, but Rio soars above them and lands on the other side. Furious, Lord Charles condemns the soldiers for failing to catch a single man. Sir Alfred notes Rio's impressive jumping ability and orders the mage squad to cast photon bullet again. However, Rio drops Celia and creates a barrier to block the attack. Sir Rice suspects Rio might be using a magical item, but soon realizes it's spirit arts. He remembers a boy who previously defeated a giant monster in the forest with similar skills. Sir Rice concludes that Rio has returned and is stronger than before. He attacks Rio, but Rio deflects it, causing an explosion that leads many to believe Rio and Celia are dead. As the smoke clears, Rio is seen still holding Celia and running away. Lord Charles orders his men to cease firing to protect Celia and instructs Sir Alfred to handle the pursuit. Alfred directs the aerial knights to encircle the capital and tells Venus to manage the wedding security and coordinate with the unit captains. Charles, frustrated, questions Alfred's authority and demands immediate capture of the raider. Alfred acknowledges the order and pursues Rio. Sir Rice, intrigued by the events and protected by his ambassador status, stays put, especially interested in Rio and the spirit he wields. As Rio and Celia escape, Celia complains about Rio's speed. He reassures her, explaining the need to go faster to evade Griffin's unit. Celia is impressed by Rio's growth and encourages him to speed up. Realizing that maintaining their current pace will make it hard to lose their pursuers, Rio decides to split up and meet later. Celia recognizes the telepathic girl from earlier and understands Rio has a plan and assistance. Rio then flies from a building and meets Aishia, transferring Celia to her. Rio tells Celia he will act as a decoy to buy them time, promising they'll escape the capital together. Aishia agrees to explain things to Celia. Aerial knights soon find Rio but not Celia. One knight identifies an alley as a dead end and signals for reinforcements. Rio prepares to make a dramatic diversion as the knights attack with blitz shot. He evades the blast and navigates between buildings, fighting off soldiers on horseback and foot. He realizes avoiding lethal force is complicating things. Sir Alfred arrives, introducing himself as the King's Sword, and demands Rio's surrender. Alfred's initial strikes result in a blade-on-blade stalemate. As the fight intensifies, Rio detects a powerful magical aura on Alfred's swords. Alfred accumulates energy for a powerful attack, causing widespread destruction. After the explosion, Sir Alfred's men search for Rio but find no trace, reporting he must have fled into the back streets. Sir Alfred suspects Rio escaped and orders a thorough search of the area, including for Lady Celia. Meanwhile, Aishia and Celia manage to evade Sir Alfred's men. Celia, worried about Rio's condition, is relieved to find him unharmed. They express gratitude, and Celia reflects on how Rio's intervention saved her life. She thanks him for rescuing her and expresses a desire to plan their next steps. Rio assures her he'll handle their needs and encourages her to stay hopeful. Suddenly, Aishia warns of danger as four-colored firelights appear in the sky. As the lights fade, Aishia pleads for help. Meanwhile, some women, unable to contact anyone due to a lack of signal, are kidnapped and taken away in a vehicle. Rio arrives just in time to rescue them. After freeing them, he asks if there is anyone else, and they direct him to a nearby building. Upon unlocking it, Rio finds Mai-chan, who closely resembles Mai-chan. She thanks him and introduces herself as Ace Maharu. Thanks for joining me on this adventure. If you enjoyed the journey, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more epic content. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't miss out on the next video. There's always more fun, surprises, and challenges ahead. Until next time, stay awesome and keep exploring.